Hi, it's Patrick Hutzel from IntensiveCareHotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives of families of critically ill patients in intensive care, so that you can have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. This is a special update, as this month a court in the United Kingdom confirmed that clinicians can't issue DNR or do not resuscitate or NFR, not for resuscitation orders, without consulting patients or families first. This unfortunate but widespread practice in intensive care units is happening all across the world, often without the knowledge or consent of critically ill patients and their families. Professor Thaddeus Pope, who is a medical futility lawyer in the United States, has posted these news on his blog last Thursday, which was the 19th of November 2015. This is another win for patients and their families in intensive care all across the world. Often, clinicians in intensive care think and believe that they are the only ones who know what's best and what's in the best interest of a critically ill patient, and they often don't consult with critically ill patients or with their families. This is shocking, and I have seen this unfortunate practice over and over again in more than 15 years intensive care nursing in 3 different countries, where I literally worked with thousands of critically ill patients and their families. I have also worked as a nurse unit manager in intensive care for more than 5 years, and I've seen it all. Once again, just like in another verdict a few weeks back in Ontario in Canada, the rights of families in intensive care when it comes to decision making in real or perceived end-of-life situations are heard, and finally doctors in intensive care need to consult with families before issuing an NFR, not for resuscitation, or DNR, do not resuscitate order. You should also check out the ebook and the video that I've done about the 5 things you need to know if the medical team in intensive care wants to limit treatment, wants to withdraw treatment or withdrawal life support, or wants to issue a DNR or NFR order for your critically ill loved one. You can click on the link to this ebook and video below this video. Generally speaking, there's way too much power that lies with intensive care teams to issue NFR, not for resuscitation, or DNR, do not resuscitate orders without consulting with critically ill patients and their families first. There's way too much of the perception in intensive care that only doctors know what's best or what's in the best interest for critically ill patients and their families in real or perceived end-of-life situations. But now, let's get into the article of what Professor Pope blogged about on his blog on the 19th of November 2015, which was basically last week. So the headline says, UK courts remind clinicians, no unilateral DNR without consultation. The text reads, in 2014, the UK Court of Appeals handed down its judgment in Tracy versus Cambridge University Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, clarifying that clinicians must consult with the patient before writing a DNR order. A study earlier this year showed that most UK clinicians had never heard of the case, and practice regarding DNR orders had not changed. This month, a new case confirmed that holding in Tracy and extended it to require consultation with the family when the patient lacks capacity. At 3 a.m. on January the 3rd, 2011, clinicians wrote a DNR order for incapacitated Carl Winspear without consulting his mother or family. The physician didn't want to inflict on Carl as treatment that was distressing, painful, undignified and futile because it had no chance of success. When his mother learned about it, she had the DNR order withdrawn at 12:30 p.m. the same day. While Carl never coded during the 9 hours the DNR order was in effect, the High Court held that the clinicians violated Carl's rights under the European Convention on Human Rights. Mrs. Winsby, as a carer, doesn't have a veto over the treatment plan, but she's entitled to be consulted. I accept the claimant's case that the core principle of prior consultation before a DNR CPR decision is put into place on the case file applies in cases both of capacity and absence of capacity. The fact that there was no cardiac arrest before the notice was cancelled is not decisive, as its existence is itself an interference with private life. It's an important decision about medical treatment of a potentially life-saving nature. If it is both practicable and appropriate to consult, then in the absence of some other compelling reason against consultation, the decision to file the DNA CPR notice on the patient's medical records would be procedurally flawed. The discharge of this procedural obligation is not a matter of challenging a clinical judgment as to the appropriate treatment for a patient. The formation of such a judgment is a necessary first step in the decision-making process before a DNA CPR notice is placed on file, but not generally a sufficient one. So that was the text that Professor Pope published on his website. P.S. I have also interviewed Professor Pope on 2 separate occasions on my podcast. You can listen to the interviews if you check out our podcast section, or if you click on the links in the written version of this blog below the video. So, how can you get peace of mind, control, power and influence quickly whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care? You get to that all-important feeling of peace of mind, control, power and influence when you download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you learn quickly how to get peace of mind, real power and real control, and how you can influence decision making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free Instant Impact Report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you will also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions, discover the many competing interests in intensive care, and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests. How to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. 5 mind-blowing tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to peace of mind, control, power and influence in your situation. You'll get real-world examples that you can easily adapt to your and your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You will get crucial behind-the-scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's blog, and I'll see you again in another update next week. Make sure you also check out our Your Questions Answered section, where I answer your questions, or send me an email to support@intensivcarehotline.com with your questions. Or you can call us, find phone numbers on our contacts tab. Also check out our product section, where you get more ebooks, videos and audio recordings, and where you can also get one-on-one consulting with me via Skype, over the phone or via email by clicking on the products tab. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivcarehotline.com, and I'll see you again next week in another update.